this is another process I would lead any business owner through, which is like, I start with what's the deepest thing I want from any client. And I want them to be interconnected. Like I want them to be connected and know that the source that they're looking for, it's inside, the needs that they have, it's inside. It's not out there in the next job and the next, right?
Hello, I'm your host, Aveline Clark, and this is the 6-Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations with amazing, incredible people all about what it takes to be 6-star, going beyond the status quo, doing things differently, and how they bring purpose, love, and impact into their businesses every day. In this episode, I sat down with a fabulous person. Her name is Julie Migneault. She has an MBA. She worked with top 500 companies in the USA for many years before having one of those, I guess, dark night of the soul moments where internally you realize that you're on the wrong path. And she honored that calling. She went and studied energy healing and transformation, came through the other end, and she's got a fabulous process where she works with businesses now. And what I love is that she's not thrown out her past training. She hasn't thrown out the MBA. She's actually been able to bring all of that together. She has a lovely disposition. It was a fabulous conversation, and I just love the way she approaches business and what she does for her clients. It's a great conversation. There's a lot to learn from her because she really is honoring that inner voice. So if there's anything that I want you to take away from this, it's to listen to how she has really mastered the art of honoring her own voice. So sit back and enjoy this one with Julie Migneault. It's another episode, another day on the 6-Star Business Podcast. I am so excited. I've got Julie with me today. Julie, I'm sorry. If I try and pronounce your surname, I'm going to get it wrong. So I'm going to let you pronounce your surname to me, please.
Julie Migneault. It's a tough one.
Thank you for that. And thank you for being here. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to connect.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started. I always ask my guests to share a bit of information with me about themselves to let our audience know about you as well. Could you tell me where do you live in the world? Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And then maybe something you like to do when you're not busy serving people.
Sure. So I live in Maui, Hawaii. I've been here about 12, 13 years now, from the East Coast of the United States, so very different. And I love it here. So anything that I do outside of work here feels like such a joy. So so grateful to be in such a beautiful place. And you asked me who I serve. So I serve professional healers, wellness practitioners, coaches, life coaches, business coaches, really anybody in the wellness, alternative health arena. I support them to build thriving businesses and to do that with a lot of integrity, to do that in a way that feels authentic to them and that integrates who they are as an outer expression of the service that they bring into the world. Did I answer all of your three questions? I don't know.
And I think so. And the last one was what you like to do when you're not busy serving people, that you basically, I think you tied that into the first one, right?
I like
where
to be outside,
you just love
here
being
at the
where
beach.
you are.
I like to be with my people, like my community, my family. I love to be dancing. Dance is one of my medicines, just like moving anything stuck. So that's one of my fun things. Yeah.
Already you've raised a couple of little questions and like little light bulbs have gone off for me. So just with the language you're using, and I'd love to just go straight into it. But first, can you give us a sense of the journey? Like what's brought you to where you are today to be serving people in this way?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I started out in corporate America. I got my MBA. I was working, for multiple Fortune 500 companies. And I was thinking back on this, and my family really wanted that career for me, and that like stability. And I wanted to be doing something that changed the world. And so I was doing human rights and sustainability work within corporations. So looking at the supply chain, how we made products, if we did that in a way that was good for people, that was good for the earth. And that was really exciting through my 20s. It was, I was traveling all over the world. But what I found was that there was a lot of toxicity in corporate America itself, never mind the supply chain and where we made our products. And I was quickly dissatisfied with that. I realized like, I was trying to still in my 20s meet the demands of like, go get a stable job and also meet my own desire to do what was true for me. And that's how I found myself at this intersection of sustainability, human rights work, and corporate America. So I had a lot of success in the corporate world pretty quick. I was rising through the ranks, but I was miserable. I started to get to that point where it was like, I would wake up and I'd be like, I'd rather die than go do this job. And, it's just the long hours, the travel, the like lack of health in the interactions at work. And so I started to question, like, what was I going to do? I was going to burn out. And I was like, am I going to do this for 40 more plus years? It was like, absolutely not. And that brought me into like I knew I wanted to do something that was serving, but I wanted to help people. And it was like psychology wasn't enough for me. Spirituality was like touching it a little bit, health and wellness. So that's how I found myself in the field of energy healing. To the shock of like my very traditional family and community, I left corporate America. I started a 4-year training at the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, where I studied in-depth energy healing and transpersonal psychology for 4 years in a really deep way. Moved to Hawaii and started a new business doing that kind of work. So it was like a complete 180. And it was scary. I thought when I took that path because of my business background, as I developed those skills, and it's like I could live and breathe transformational work day and night. That part was so fulfilling. I had this kind of thought that with my business background, when I went to start my healing practice and working with clients, that would be like, okay, I got that. I can do that. But it was far more difficult than I thought. The inner work to actually I was the service, it wasn't like I had this big company behind me that it was my marketing myself, having to be seen, having to put myself out there, having to charge, all these things that, oh my God, they were just they were terrifying, right? And the fact that I struggled at the beginning to make that work really had me do some really deep work on myself. And it was perfect, because as I moved through that and I started to really integrate the inner and the outer, so who I am, finding more confidence in taking that and letting people see it, and having a really solid business model and the strategy and the marketing that would reflect that. As I found those keys and like started to be able to do that, my practice started to get going. I found that a lot of other practitioners were asking me, what are you doing? How are you doing this? So I really built my private practice first. And I was working with clients with a lot of emotional trauma and, actually a lot of corporate people who also hated that, like had a big sense of disconnect and wanted something more. That was the first real audience that I served. But I had all these other practitioners saying, like, what are you doing? Can you help me? And so I finally decided, like, I'm just going to teach this. I'm going to teach healers how to overcome their own fear of the business world of marketing and do this thing so that they can actually get their work out there and serve in the ways that they're meant to serve. So it's really rewarding, because now that I'm helping these alternative health practitioners, healers, chiropractors, whatever they are, all these different modalities, to build solid businesses, I get to see the ripple effect. I get to see like, wow, they're really making a difference when they're not staying small and thinking that business isn't for them and that they don't have what it takes to do that. So that's basically the summary of how I came to be doing what I'm doing now.
Wow, what a journey. How exciting. Now, I could imagine all of your business friends and family being totally shocked when you're like, yep, I'm off to do some energy training now. Going up to college, 4 years of it actually, and I'm changing my life. Yeah, right. Julie is off her knocker, right? Was it like that? She's gone crazy. What's she doing?
Yeah, my dad's exact words. I don't know if you have this in Australia, but my dad's exact words is like, you have a 401k, which is our retirement, like investing when you like, when I was like, yeah, I remember, I know. And I'll come live on your couch if it all goes to shit, Dad. I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking.
But how nice that you could laugh about it and put it back on him and say, yeah, absolutely. Well, did you have any doubt about the shift, in your journey? Was there any kind of little niggles or fear or doubts as you entered the energy healing course?
In that sense, I just knew that was what I was meant to be doing. And one of the things I actually taught for a lot of years before I was teaching healers is inner guidance. Like, I felt so clear, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. It was so that it wasn't doubt that this is where I was doing what I meant to be doing. It was that when it didn't work, like at first, that the terror more than doubt set in. Like, wait, I'm doing it in the way that I went and got my MBA. I spent years in business school. The model I had for business didn't translate. And so when the way that I was doing it didn't work, I really came into this like panic around something had to dismantle. Some old ways of doing things had to dismantle. And that was really scary because it was like, will I get to the other side? So that was the doubt. Like, I was going to keep trudging through, but it was through the unknown. It wasn't like, oh, this is, I left one world and I stepped into a different one. The world of entrepreneurship is very different also than corporate business, right? And small business is very different than, those large businesses. So I was getting a crash course in that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And I want to hone in on what you just said about it wasn't like you went from one world to another. It wasn't like you said, oh, this old model doesn't fit me, so I'm just going to go to this other proven model over here that looks like it might fit me. You went into the unknown jungle of, I need to figure out my own path.
Exactly.
Right? That's what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Yeah. And I don't know how energy we can talk here, but I actually felt this dismantling of these structured levels of my energy fields kind of like dissolve. and it was beautiful from looking back at the moment. It was terrifying, but now I experienced it as like, I had a lot of outer structure. You go to school, you get a good job, you do these things, you check these boxes, and that all dismantled. And what came was this new inner structure that I built from listening and following and building it step by step. And I would say one of my greatest, like something I'm deeply grateful for in my life now is this balance that I have between the structure I've created for my life is mine. It fits, and that creates a lot of flow. It creates a lot of freedom. And it's what I teach too,
The more I listen and meet amazing business owners on this podcast and hear them talk about what they do and why they've done things, it further expands on the notion that Six Star really is about doing things differently. And what that means is doing things authentically and letting go of these old paradigms of, business. I grew up in a household where my father ran a small business. He had staff, and that was my experience, my entry into small business. But he had his structures, and he had an industry that governed, a lot of what he did. It was in financial services. And yet now today, I feel like there's more freedom. People are more able to say, well, actually that old way doesn't serve me anymore. And I feel like more and more people are being challenged to step up and actually bring themselves. And I think there's a struggle there, isn't there, around they're hitting against a wall. They don't realize why it's not working, but it's because I believe a lot of it is they bring this false facade or a side of them that isn't actually authentic because it's who they think they need to be to fit this old business model. And that's where there's a lot of struggle.
Yeah, I especially find that in marketing, right? Like there's a way we think that we have to disconnect and do this marketing thing so that we can run our business and find the clients and so that we can do the thing we want to do. And, it's like can be tactic oriented and a lot of people either it just doesn't feel good, right? If you, especially in the audience that I serve, it's like, that's not going to work. And so finding that journey to integrate that it's actually showing up as who you are is the service and is the marketing. It's not separate from what you do in your business, whatever, whether that's financial services or whatever it is, finding that that's not, we don't disconnect from ourselves to do these different parts of our business. We actually do, I call it the inside out approach. It's like inside out way of building. And that requires inner work. It requires mindset shifts. It requires self-awareness. It requires like looking at what are the patterns that are running that are no longer serving, and thus not creating the joy and the just the ease that we want in our work.
So it's so refreshing to me to hear you speak this way, because I've been in my own business for 13, 14 years or something like that, and I've seen so many business owners just display these behaviors and characteristics of being stuck and having this struggle because they just don't know how to dismantle these things that don't serve them. You touched on a couple of things there. I want to ask you about purpose. What does purpose mean to you, and how important is that in the work you do with your clients?
Well, for me personally, purpose to me is like the calling, the thing that's calling to me on a soul level. Like really, it's like, what am I here to do? And it's bigger than our small self, right? Like the thoughts that we have that limit us. It's bigger than that. I talk about it as like an energy that wants to move through us and through our lives. And people ask me a lot, like, there's been this feedback I've gotten since I was very young, which I used to think was so bizarre. Like, when you asked, you have doubt, like they ask me, how are you so confident in these choices that you make? Like, how do you make these choices so like, I didn't really question, should I leave corporate America, this thing I've spent my first part of my life building, and just drop it? I just knew. And, so I tried to dissect that, because I thought that's a weird question. Does nobody else, like, I didn't know. So I started to dissect that. And I realized that I'm not making decisions about 5 years out. And people will come to me and like ask, like, how do I find my purpose? And I don't find that purpose is something that drops from the sky into your lap. Like, here it is. It's a series of small decisions that are right and true. It's like you follow the breadcrumbs and you listen to what feels right and true for you. It doesn't always feel easy. It doesn't always go with the grain. Sometimes it's against the grain. But when we actually just, I think about Oprah, I imagine that she didn't ever picture herself where she was. She just took the right, best next step that was most true. To me, that's purpose, right? Like following those grains of sand that lead you to where you're going, So it's not as clear cut as I'm going to create a 5-year plan. I'm going to back it out and here's how we're going to get there. You can do some of that. Some of that's really helpful, but it's also about a process of, again, that inner process of listening deeply and finding what your way of listening is. For some people, it's just a felt sense, like, that's not right for me. It's this is what's calling me. And it's not necessarily linear, right? Like sometimes we take these little detours and that led me here. And now I'm finding fulfillment and meaning. And I think fulfillment and meaning are good indicators that you're on purpose. Feeling a sense of real meaning in your life.
That's a great response. It makes so much sense. How often do you draw on your MBA and your corporate experience when you're working with your customers? Because you just made the analogy just then around, you just don't do a 5-year plan and then you pack it out and then off you go. Purpose is this thing that's ongoing. It comes through us. When someone taps into that purpose and they've got fulfillment and meaning flowing through their veins and they go, yes, I've got that. Do you then advise them to do the 5-year plan, or is that sort of structure too structured, in what you advise your clients?
So I don't really call on a 5-year plan anymore. I ask my clients to do a visioning process and feel what's true and actually get in touch with what they most want on a very practical level. And then I do help them build a business model that would get them there. So if the desire, we get really clear on what it would look like if they were doing the thing that was really most enlivening, then we do actually create a business model, meaning like, okay, how many clients would you need to see? What would you charge in that case? Like, what would it look like? But it's coming from a different place. And, it's funny. I always say I'm teaching healers how to do market research. I don't know a lot of healers who even know what that term means, and it really scares them. But it's so valuable to connect with. All that means really is listening deeply. That's how you don't have to translate it to someone who doesn't have an MBA or a business background. What's the language your clients are using so that you can really compassionately meet them in their needs using their own language? And then we do the work of market research. So I do find that what my MBA has done for me and that corporate background, my brain just actually has an analytical side that's really useful, to break things down and be able to create and build in a tangible way. Yeah. I'm grateful for my MBA.
What an interesting mix. Yes. See, it wasn't wasteful. Everything that you've done has brought you to here, and it's all part of who you are, part of the package, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I absolutely love it. So what made you choose serving specifically health and wellness practitioners?
They just found me. It's funny because I say it's not like my big thought was I'm going to talk about marketing and how to market yourself. I'm not going to talk about that. That's not the thing. But this is another process I would lead any business owner through, which is like I start with what's the deepest thing I want from any client. And I want them to be interconnected. Like I want them to be connected and know that the source that they're looking for, it's inside, the needs that they have, it's inside. It's not out there in the next job and the next, right? So that's why I do what I do. And that's what I'm looking to support people to do. If they come to me because they need help building their business, or they come to me because their career isn't working, or it doesn't really matter. The approach we're going to take is by going internal first and then going from there. So they found me, they kept asking. And so I finally was like, okay, again, another one of those breadcrumbs where it's like, I'm going to answer this call. I'm going to show up. I could see that I had a unique opportunity with my healing skills, my energy skills, and my business background to integrate them.
That sounds really fascinating. So tell me, I mean, here's a question. I'm just laughing at myself before I even ask you this, because I think you do this so naturally. How important is it for you to be doing things differently in business?
Well, for me, business has to equal integrity. Yeah, business has to be about alignment. It has to be sustainable too. It has to be good for people, the communities around us. It has to be good for the earth. That comes, all the way back to where I started my career. And I can't separate those two things. So for me, if it's the vehicle, business is the vehicle for service, and it gives us these wheels, to actually do these incredible things in the world. And I also see business as an opportunity for incredible leadership, because there are businesses in the world that are not doing good in the world, right? They use harsh chemicals that kill their workers. I saw those factories when my first part of my career. We have examples of that. Or they use marketing tactics that are actually out of integrity and slimy or whatever. So I find that for anybody listening to this podcast or wants to be in business, there's such a leadership opportunity, because when you use the vehicle of business to show up with that level of integrity and build incredibly service-oriented, trust-oriented businesses, the world needs more of that. The world needs businesses that are integrating and, are operating in harmony with people, the earth, and, our communities. So that's my particular view of business.
It's a very insightful view, I should say. I love how you've said that the world needs more of this service orientation to integrate the different parts of ourselves. And I see it as being less of a transaction, less of, just seeing it as product, service, profit, arrangement, and more of how can I serve you? Not let's focus on the inside of a business and how can we make our business better and more profitable and how can I make more money, but rather what do you need and how can I bring myself to you in that moment or in this moment to heal. And I feel that, I don't know about you, but I feel like there's is it a consciousness shift in the business communities that I'm around, and it's not necessarily a spiritual talk, but certainly what I'm seeing is a shift in people becoming more purposeful, more aware, and having these conversations where they genuinely want to actually serve people, and they want to take that focus away from the old model of business, that competitive model of business that just focuses on money. Do you see that as well? Like, what's your experience in sort of looking at the 30,000 foot view of where business is now?
Yeah, I totally see that trend that's been happening for a long time. And even just to go back to my corporate days, when I was still in college, I'm 40 years old now. I started my first job at Reebok, the shoe company, and they had a human rights department. And they were one of the first companies that had that after this Nike scandal where there was these child laborers making shoes. And by the time I left that industry, it was widespread that even at the corporate level, companies were trying to do better and to make an impact. And I think there's some research, I can't quote it, but there's research on the upcoming generations that they are not willing to stay in jobs that don't fulfill them at the level of meaning and purpose and impact. So I think it's really hopeful. I think it's really, really hopeful that that shift is definitely happening, and people want more than just to go and do a job that doesn't bring them any fulfillment or actually make a difference.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Where do you see is the biggest opportunity, I guess, in the next 5 years? Do you tap into that and sort of see the trends? And because of that MBA experience, I'm sure, and all the market research, do you look at that and go, right, here's what I can feel or see is coming up?
You know what I think the biggest opportunity is at the level of business. Now, I work with healers. They do all this inner work. They do their shadow work. That they're not in this category, but for the general small business, corporate, whatever it is, the biggest opportunity I see is for people to actually do their own personal healing. And that sounds pretty woo. It could sound woo, right? But what that means is actually finding the places, like it starts at the level of relationship. Business is just a group of people coming together with an intention to do something, right? With some intention. And so, if the people within the organizations are actually becoming more conscious of how their own material, meaning, the pain that they've experienced, the conditioning that they've absorbed around, well, this is how business looked when I was a child. And it's all about, you have to work hard and make the money and who cares. If people actually start to do that on an individual level, and even just looking at how they show up in relationship to their coworkers, to the people that they're in relationship to, instead of coming from a defensive, protective or a competitive view, and find ways for more connection and collaboration. I think that's a huge opportunity that we each can personally do something to really create a big shift in the way that organizations run.
Thank you. I love that. Do you see that as being across any sized business? Is this everywhere, or is this
I think
more?
so, yeah. For me, it is. I mean, I used to do consulting with bigger organizations, and we would do shadow work. We were going in and finding out, the companies thought we were coming in to help them be more efficient, but their teams weren't working because they had all this stuff. And, we would do this work with one leader at a certain, mid-level or higher. And, they had a lot of betrayal issues in their life. So they were really not trusting, and they had this defensive pattern with their teams, and it just rippled out through the whole organization. So I think the bigger the company that does that kind of work and at the higher levels of leadership, the more powerful. And I also think that at the levels of higher leadership, people are finding that they really get stuck and they can't advance in the ways they want to. And the answer isn't more pushing and achievement. It's unlocking these different places that are going to move them forward with more, again, connection, collaboration. And that does create real world results. It does create better profits. It does create a better product when you do that, you know?
Oh, for sure. And as you were speaking, I was tuning in to I guess, people I know, people I've worked with, imagining their response to listening to what you just said. And some of them would be frightened at the notion of connection, like these words that are so heart-based. How do those people transition, the ones who are still locked in this old frame and paradigm of doing business where it's left brain, transaction, competitiveness, focus on profits, mechanics, you know, all of those things, everything that's separate from our soul and who we really are? Are they a lost cause, or is there hope for them?
I mean, personally, I think there's hope for any and everyone. You know, this is a personal story. My husband was a military leader, and really deep in the military, he has now studied energy healing and Ayurvedic medicine and all these things. And so I think if someone can go that far in extreme worlds, anything is possible. He's sort of my like inspiration of like, wow. Right. So I've seen it with my own eyes. Yeah, of course there's going to be fear if you think there's something you lose, you know, in a competitive model, you lose something by opening to collaborate or connect. That's not actually the truth. It's just a protective measure. So I think that pain in some ways is a catalyst. So for people that are really holding on tightly to, you know, that transactional way of doing business, there has to be like, this isn't working anymore for someone to maybe be motivated to do it differently. So, you know, one person at a time, you know, the people who are ready are the place to start. That's for sure. But even the leaders, I found leaders where they weren't really open to it, but then they just get a little taste of what's possible. And then that's also another entry point. You know, it's just like a little taste of making a shift and moving from more competitive to more collaborative, and then seeing a result that can really help.
Yeah, of course. You know, it's just like getting a taster of ice cream at the ice cream store. And I think if people can experience that emotionally and have that, you know, visual or whatever, that the way they take that taster in, you know, as long as they can feel it emotionally, then that's the most important thing. And they realize that actually this is real and it is a different way of being.
Yeah.
And that's when magic can happen, right?
Absolutely.
I've got a question. This is a 6-Star Business Podcast.
Yes.
What does being 6-star mean to you?
6-star to me means purpose-driven, connected to something that's more than just we're doing it for some out there, you know, disconnected, like just to make money or just to. So it's purpose-driven, it's connected, it comes with integrity. 6-star is that model where who we're being and how we're running our businesses can provide incredible leadership and service to the world, and model something new, model something that I believe the world really needs, which is that the way that we do business actually is in harmony with our lives, our communities, the earth, right? It's not at the expense of anything else. Yeah. Right. A lot of times we can find ourselves doing things at the expense of ourselves. So I have to work harder than it's good for my health, and I'm burning out, and my stress is 12,000 times off the charts. I'm using materials or whatever, and it's actually harming the earth. And there's no way to, you know, it doesn't actually create, sustainability in what the world needs. All of those things, when we're actually doing it at the expense of something, to me, we want to do things that are not at the expense of ourselves and our communities.
I really love that response. And I think it's the first time I've really heard someone talk about 6 Star as being doing something when it's not at the expense of someone else, in that language. And it's beautiful language because it's just so respectful and loving and accepting of the whole of life. It's not this siloed individual experience. We are always in symbiotic relationship with others and our planet, our nature around us and everything. And it's what 6 Star, what I'm hearing you say is it's about actually taking responsibility and being in harmony with all those relationships that we have with everything around us.
Yeah, and that really starts with being in harmony with ourselves. That's the first place to go. And, to not do your job or build your business in a way that's at the expense of yourself, that often takes some again, inner work, to not work past what's healthy, to have healthy boundaries in the relationships, to not be overgiving, but also to be, showing up fully. Like that's where it starts. And that's actually enough. If you can just do that for yourself, it will ripple out and it'll be good for everybody.
I so agree with that. Given that you do this, every day with your clients, if someone's listening to this who is resonating and they're going, wow, yes, I get all of that. But where do I start? How do I start to be in harmony with myself? How do I do this inner work? What does it mean? How would you
that's a really great question,
or help them on that journey?
That's a really great question. I think that this process is best done in community or with support, right? Because it's like we're swimming in the sea of our own consciousness and our own conditioning. And so sometimes having the support of a mentor, a guide, a healer, a coach, a facilitator, or just a community that's actually introspective in some way, is a really great place to start. And even before that, the number one thing that I could suggest is that it requires some slowing down. Self-awareness starts with slowing down. And when you slow down, you can start to become more aware of and curious, just getting really curious about how the way that you're living, your thoughts and your actions are not necessarily getting you what you want. And that slowing down to just get curious and inquire can be a really powerful way to start to see, like, oh yeah, I have a deep core belief that I have to work hard in order to survive and make a good living. Well, if that belief is running, then I'm going to keep experiencing that. So yeah, those would be my top two suggestions. And practices like meditation and breath work and things like those can be really powerful, introductory tools to just letting yourself slow down and get beyond what just those repetitive thoughts in the mind are. And we're like little programs, we're kind of doing the same things over and over that worked until they don't work anymore. That's all of us,
Yeah, absolutely. They're great suggestions. Thank you. Something got triggered when you were speaking for me, or a little flash of, and it's around competition and and I know for me, competition has been inherent in the fabric of the business world that I've been in from, over a decade. How do you see competition? Is it healthy? Is it destructive? How does someone who's listening to this and hearing about slowing down and, doing inner work deal with this nature of competitiveness, especially in this social media frenzied world, that we exist in? I'd love to unpack that a bit.
That's a big topic, and I love that topic. So the truth is, I don't believe in competition. I really don't believe in it. When practitioners come to me and they say, but somebody else over there is doing it better. Who am I to be doing this? They're already doing it. Even if you're doing the exact same thing as somebody else, nobody can do it like you, because each of us have a different essence, a different soul, a different way of being. So if the teaching comes through me and you were going to teach the same thing, it would come out of your mouth differently and it would touch different people who needed to hear it or experience it or had your different flavor to it. So the way to get out of the competitive mindset, which can be tricky, like it can be at a business level where how's my business doing compared to this? And there's like just a personal level. I mean, when I was in corporate America, there was a lot of competition amongst our own teams. I remember saying to my boss, I'm on your team and I'm doing this to support your goal. You know, like, why are you throwing me under the bus? We're on the same team. So when those things come up, the fastest way out of competition is to reconnect back to our own unique, it's not our medicine, like the thing we're here to do and that purpose, but also just staying really true to what's mine to do. What's mine to do? What's mine to do? Again, from that place of like listening and following that. And for me, marketing is meeting other people in their need. So again, like you asked me, why am I doing this? I'm doing this because enough people asked me that I felt an upwelling to serve and support this particular thing. Now, other people teach what I teach. Other people teach all sorts of entrepreneurs how to build a business. But there are certain people that are only going to come to me because of my way of doing that and talking about that. So the more that you can be who you are, which just, again, it sounds so woo and like whatever, but it's the truth. The more that you can actually just dial back who you think you had to be good at this thing and actually just do your thing, we really eliminate competition, in my opinion.
And it's a great opinion, and I couldn't agree more. I love the way that you expressed that and explained it. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm got my cynical hat on here because I'm thinking about some business owners that I know, thinking they're imagining them listening to this, and they're going to go, "Yeah, but this is all great, Julie, wonderful, but you know, I've got this vision. I want to make $1 million next year." And there's this guy over here that's showing me the 7 steps secret formula to building my 7-figure business. This just sounds a bit too soft for me.
Yeah.
Can someone still get to that $1 million by going down this different path? You know, how does a person like that integrate this or even be open to it? Does it work?
Yeah. Well, I think absolutely that anybody can get to 7 figures or beyond or whatever the external goal is with a different approach. And again, remember I told you I was like in a place where I was doing business the old way and it didn't work for me anymore. And I had to find that new way. So there is a growth process, but no matter what, if you're going to build a 7-figure business, you're going to come across challenge. There's going to be different things that you're going to hit up against. So then it's like, which hard do you want? Do you want the hard of, the old way, or do you want the hard of finding something that's actually going to give you deep meaning, give you a lifestyle that you really love. And, because you're not doing things at the expense of yourself anymore. I often talk about slowing down to speed up. Like we need to slow down to be deeply connected to what it is that we're doing so that it actually speeds us up in the long term. And what is that external goal anyway? I am all about highly successful, abundant, thriving 6 and 7 figure businesses. So it's not that, but I'm saying like, why is that important? Because if the why isn't there and the why is just to make the 7 figures, generally the fulfillment isn't going to come anyway. So what about slowing down to find what's deeply true and fulfilling and actually going to make you feel alive along the journey and bring you meaning along the way, and let that be the thing that actually is your vehicle to get you to the external goal. Then you find the 7 figures isn't necessarily as important, or it's just that much more enjoyable when you get there to the 7 figures.
Couldn't agree more. And what a joyful journey that would be, rather than just, staying on that, determined path with the focus of the money, which is what we've already uncovered in this conversation. And so many others I've had is that it's just not fulfilling.
Yeah.
On its own, it just doesn't bring us what we as humans need.
Right. We don't want to exclude anything that is really important to us along the journey, like family and the relationships that bring us real meaning and our health. And because at the end of the day, the 7 figures isn't actually going to do that much for us if we've given up all those things, which I could see myself on that trajectory in corporate America. I saw everybody else on the trajectory. That was just what everybody was doing. And how painful to have to give up so many of those things that are so important for what, right? So including those things as part of the vision and part of what's going to, give you the actual meaning along the way. I don't know. It's a no-brainer for me. Yeah. The thing that gets in the way is the fear,
You've lived and breathed it and proven it.
Right. Yeah. I've proven it to myself. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah. My life is very spacious. Yeah. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of financial freedom. I have a life that's actually very yummy, right? But it is the fear of the change. And it's real. Those fears have to be worked through, but those fears are already there. Generally, we're just working beyond those fears to kind of cover them up. They're still under there,
Yeah. Oh, that's gold. It's wonderful. Julie, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I'd like to know, are there any sort of gold nugget? I mean, you've given me so much already today, but are there any kind of one or two steps or things that you can leave our listeners with as takeaways?
Yeah. You kind of clued me in that we're talking to an audience of people that are business oriented and they want a lot of success in their work. And that's amazing. So my invitation is just, to ask those bigger questions, like, what is meaning to me? What actually brings me meaning in my life? How would I create more of that? Is my work really giving me that? And, or am I just a few tweaks away from slowing down to speed up and realigning with that? Is a worthwhile question to just sit with, put it in your subconscious mind and let it go to work, and just, ask yourself, like, what would it look like if this was bringing me the level of meaning that I really want for myself?
That's beautiful, powerful, insightful, and also a little bit daunting and potentially scary for some people when they actually ask the question. And yet it's also darn exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because it's possible. That's the other hope I would want to leave. It's really, really possible to carve your own path, and
Yeah. It is that magical path, the better way, or that more inspired journey is absolutely possible. And I think what you've shared with me today is all of the ways in which that can be possible. Julie, thank you so much for everything. I've absolutely loved this conversation. I can't believe how quick it's flown.
I know. I loved it too.
It's just been a joy.
Yeah, thank you for what you do, and thank you for bringing light to these conversations.
You're so welcome. I look forward to having you back on the show one day, hopefully not too far away. I know that there's certain topics we could, dive into and unpack further. And I think that our listeners would really love to go there. So, yeah, let's just create that little possibility bubble. But for now, I know it's evening there in Hawaii. I can see the darkness in the windows behind you. The sun's gone down. So I wish you a lovely evening. Thank you so much for spending the time with me, and we'll be in touch. And thank you for doing what you're doing. It's absolutely wonderful. So,
thank you so
inspiring.
Much. Thank you.